when we decided to source the yarn from the Northeast, we were able to obtain a more constant supply of yarn from two farms in the Northeast. One is a young couple who are homesteading in way upstate New York, and they raise a flock of all different color fin sheep. So a range of natural colors from brown, a fairly deep brown to white. And then in central New York State, a 4-H farm, a 4-H boy is raising a white flock of fin sheep. So those the clips from both of those farms were combined to make a range of colors, and the mill the mill really made the decision to spin as a 3-ply sport weight. We hadn't really discussed it, but when we got it, we really liked it. And with a 3-ply construction, you get a smoother yarn, one that is denser because it's made up of 3 plies that are more fine, and they're spun, when 3 plies when 3 thin plies are put together into a yarn, they twist slightly differently than a 2-ply does. And so you get this smooth yarn with a little more drape to it, slightly more drape, definitely more density. And that allows the yarn to be less fuzzy and to be a little more hard wearing, because the individual plies can be spun a little bit tighter and the fiber ends won't be released as easily. It does allow for a little bit better wear, although not, it's not a huge difference in this case. So both yarns are 100% American raised fin fiber, but the construction differences make them very different yarns, and we just thought that would be super interesting for Barn Box members to see and to experience. Part of Barn Box is that we like to make it an educational experience for everyone, and many people don't understand what difference does it make if I have 2-ply or 3-ply. And here, right in your hands, you can see it. And so if you wanted to, you can even knit the same pattern over again in the 3-ply yarn, if it's of interest to see the difference in the way the two yarns behave. It's not mandatory or even recommended, but you could, and it would be a really interesting lesson. So for those who weren't in our Barn Box last November, a little bit of background about the fin sheep. The Finnish breed is one of our heritage breeds, meaning that it has always been, sheep have always been a domesticated animal, and it is a domesticated animal, but the early husbandry of the breed and the raising of the breed was a little more natural. So farmers didn't manipulate breed characteristics to the extent that they do today with modern breeds. And the heritage breeds have more differentiated characteristics and more of their own. Each breed has really unique characteristics. The Finnish wool is a medium length fiber it's very springy. It's available in a range of colors. So the sheep themselves produce a whole range of shades, but not as many shades as a Romney, for instance, or a Shetland sheep, but 4 to 5 distinct shades can be gleaned from the fiber. And typically these sheep are a single color per coat, so they don't really exhibit an extraordinary number of different markings where the shades are mixed in the coat. And so in our 3-ply line, we have the pure white or the cream, we have gray, brown, and then an oatmeal color, which is a fawn. You can think of it as a fawn color on the sheep. And further, for this new shade that we created, we mixed a little more white in with the gray to make a silver gray. It's not, if I'm not mistaken, this isn't a natural color, in that we don't see silver gray in sheep. They're either gray or white, and we've mixed it. So so that's a little bit about the Finn sheep. It's a very old breed. It's a precursor to breeds such as Shetland and even the Romney and Lincoln breeds. It's one of the, I guess you might even call it a Basil breed of sheep. So it's one of the really old breeds that was isolated in its geography enough that it has been able to maintain its unique breed characteristics, since the beginning and up until the present day. The breed was transported into the United States, like many European breeds, transported into the United States between the middle of the 1800s and the early 1900s, was when a lot of shipping routes increased. Industry was beginning to develop around the world, and so cultures began to trade not just goods, not just finished goods, but the raw materials to make finished goods. And especially because the United States was pretty far ahead in industrialization, we were constantly on the lookout for different raw materials from around the world to produce unique goods here at home. And so Finn sheep were brought into the United States in the early to mid 1900s, and really didn't take hold so much until the 1960s and 70s, or 50s through 70s. And it took a while for, even when I started hand spinning in the early 2000s, Finn fiber was fairly rare to come across. You might see it at a wool show, you might hear about it through the grapevine, some farm or other. But now the cultivation of the breed here in the United States is pretty well established, and some really nice sized flocks exist in different pockets of the country. It does thrive in the cooler areas of the country, so it's not so much of a hot weather sheep, but as the world changes, that as our climate continues to change so rapidly, that it'll be interesting to see how this breed, as well as others, adapt to the changes in climate. Does anybody have questions about the kind of provenance or the sourcing or anything like that before I continue? Always remember, you can pop up anytime. You can raise your hand, literally, although I can't see all of you at once, or there's a little hand raiser function in Zoom that you can use to ask a question. And this is your time. This is our time together, and it's really focused on you. So I want to hear from you. Pam?
What is a Basil breed? I think you mentioned that before, and I had never heard that before.
Basil breeds are kind of like the original breeds. It's true for dogs, as well as sheep and other animals. So when you talk about the Basil breeds, those are breeds that other breeds have been developed from. So the Northern European breeds of sheep tend to be very old, long running breeds. And as they were transported to other places and bred with other sheep, they produce new breeds of sheep. of which, I've said it many times, but there are over 1,400 different breeds of sheep, and they all didn't originate in some pocket of the world that's unique. Almost all of them were originated as cross breeds of other breeds. But the oldest standing breeds are what we would call the land race breeds, breeds that are very unique to a particular place and have a particular set of characteristics. Most of those very old breeds are short tail breeds with a range of natural colors in their coats. They have horns, and they are, generally hardy breeds that are able to exist without human help, really. So, at one point, some of these breeds were even wild, and there are a couple breeds that remain what we consider wild. But over time, humans did domesticate sheep at a very early stage of our own development. So domestication of farm animals has been going on for, more than centuries, millennia. And some of the very early sheep breeds, the very unique early sheep breeds, we can refer to those as Basil breeds. You can trace the lineage of many of today's other breeds or more modern breeds back to those, the genetics back to those breeds. And the same is true for dogs. I mean, for instance, Shar-Peis are one of the Basil breeds of dogs. I usually can rattle off a whole list, but there are like, I don't know, 5 or 9 Basil breeds of dogs, I think, something like that. And with sheep, it's a little more broad. I don't know how many are kind of contained in that definition, but does that help you out?
Yeah, that's good, because I had never heard that word before, and so that's why I just wanted to know what that actually meant. So
yeah, kind of think about it. It's like the word is related to the word baseline or base, so kind of foundation. I think too, they sometimes are called foundation breeds in some, in some conversations.
What does the sheep actually look like? Is it a small sheep? Is it kind of? I'm assuming since it's a like a baseline breed, it's maybe a smaller sheep, but in comparison,
probably in the beginning, yes, but it is a larger breed. It is raised for it is a multi-purpose breed. So a lot of these early breeds were raised that way, where they weren't just raised to make wool. They were raised to and bred to produce a fair amount of flesh for eating and milk. Some of them also produce milk, although not the finished breed, but it's a fairly long. It's very similar in appearance to an Icelandic sheep, if you're familiar with that. It doesn't have the same long shaggy hair, but it's really similar to it's a single coated sheep, so it doesn't produce an undercoat, just one single coat. And like many single coated sheep, that coat will sometimes have like a coarse fiber here and there scattered throughout that is kind of pulled over from a time when it was a more coarse fur. So the fiber is a medium crimp, medium length, and medium fineness. It's a nice all-around fiber for clothing and household goods. It's nice and springy. I don't have the ability, because I'm on my iPad, I don't have the ability to Google it at the same time to bring up like a photo. But honestly, you could. I do have my phone somewhere. I was just trying to remember if they are, I don't know where my phone is. I was just trying to remember if they are bald faced or fur faced, and I have it in my head that kind of they don't have a lot of hair on their face. They have like a long nose and not a lot of fur. Yeah, I don't know where I put my phone, but anyway. I can't remember what I was going to do next. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the design. So the feature design for this month is and the new, I shouldn't say feature because they're all feature designs, but the new pattern this month is the interlocking swatch cap. And it really is so I have a finished sample here. This is the medium size that was modeled. And then I have another one that's a little longer. So we also have the slightly longer version. I knit this in 2 different yarns. Actually, I also knit it in the Targhee Tango, which you received in an earlier barn box this year, just to see. They're both sport weight yarns, and just to kind of see what the difference between them is. The sample knit with the 3-ply Fin Dandy, they're exactly the same size. You know, they turn out exactly the same size on the same needles, but the one in the Fin Dandy is a little silkier when I touch it and smoother. The Targhee, as an example of an alternate yarn, the Targhee has a soft, almost flannelly kind of surface. It's not particularly fuzzy, but it's airier and kind of cushier, and the stitches are not as even. So if super even stitch gauge is desirable to you, the Fin fabric is probably going to be a little more appealing. So compared to the Targhee, you can see that the stitch definition in the Fin Dandy is slightly more crisp and exacting, whereas the Targhee definitely has the look of a softer, more velvety fabric surface, if that makes sense. And part of that is that the Targhee, or if you have some of the Fin 2-ply, a 2-ply yarn just cannot be made as evenly as a 3-ply yarn. Having just 2 plies exposes the yarn to just a little more inconsistency, especially with fibers that are stickier, have a little more lanolin in them, or maybe contain a little bit of tweediness or neps, that ball up within the fiber itself. So 2-ply yarn just cannot be as consistent. Once you add that 3rd ply, the consistency of a yarn increases exponentially. It's almost like magic. The ability of all the plies to kind of adjust to each other and fill in each other's thin and thick spots really increases a lot. And so you get a yarn that's much more consistent all along its length. You'll still get a few bumps and lumps with an artisan yarn, the way that we have them spun, but not like a 2-ply yarn. And as the yarn gets thicker, the inconsistency in a 2-ply yarn will become even more of a characteristic. Personally, I really like that about 2-ply yarn, about our 2-ply yarns anyway. But I know that there are people who are real sticklers for that super consistent fabric. This design is, it's just one of my favorite designs. I designed a skirt about 4 or 5 years ago using this same stitch pattern, the interlock skirt. And it's always been, I just always thought it looked so sharp. It had such the stitch pattern itself lends such a clean, sharp stitch definition to whatever yarn you're using with it. So because of the twisted stitches and the sharp angles in the design of the motif, it really amplifies and adds to the crispness of the stitch definition with even a very soft yarn. So a stitch pattern like this will stabilize a very soft yarn and give it some extra body that it might not have. And because I love the skirt so much, and I got to thinking that it might be really beautiful as a top-down circular yoke sweater. So one of the ways to prepare for knitting such a sweater was to create this cap as a swatch. The sweater is worked completely in the round from the top down, and so the best way to swatch for it is to swatch in the round. And if you're going to swatch in the round, you might as well make a hat or a mitten or something useful. So that's where the design, that was the thinking behind the design, and the choosing of the stitch pattern came from a previous project that I had never really let go of in terms of wanting to do more of it. And so within a few weeks, we will be publishing the interlock and pullover. And this is the interlock and pullover knit in the Fin Dandy that you're holding in your hands. It's going to have 2 lengths. This is the shorter kind of crop length with a 12-inch side seam. The design goes all around the hem and then all around the yoke. So it starts at the top. It starts actually at this point at the top. The neck band is added on later, and that improves the stability of the neckline. So it starts at the top, and it's actually worked, upside down the way. So you would be working in, from from the top down, but you'd be working from the top up in your knitting. And each wedge starts out as 6 stitches and ultimately increases to 20 stitches. So throughout the yoke, there are a series of increases that add to the width of each wedge. And then size-wise, there are additional wedges. As you go up in size, you get additional wedges. So that's the sweater. And we all agree here that it's super lovely to wear. I knitted both in the Fin Dandy 3-ply, and the one that's on the mannequin here is the Targhee Tango Sport. And we don't have enough of the Fin Dandy 2-ply in-house to know if it would, how it would knit up in this sweater, but I bet it would be lovely. This hat or this sweater, either one, has such a distinct it's such a distinct stitch pattern. The knit and purl contrast is so high in this stitch pattern that I think it would do beautifully even with a yarn that's a little bit fuzzy, like the Shetland Sport or the Fin Dandy 2-ply Sport. So as soon as we get some more of that in, I'll be testing that. I just really love the way all of the components came together for this project. And by the way, we do plan to bring the 2-ply Fin Dandy Sport back. It won't be in Barn Box again because we already had it once, but we're hoping that we will have it by the first of the year. I don't know where it is in the queue at the mill that makes it, but I know that the fiber has been purchased, so that means it's going to be coming up really soon. And we couldn't be more excited to be bringing that back. I know it was a Barn Box favorite, and it disappeared in the wink of an eye. So not enough people got to really experience the full beauty of it, but we are bringing that back, and hopefully sooner than later. And now I'm knitting my third, and this is kind of interesting. So I'm knitting my third interlocking pullover in the Targhee Tango. I wanted to see if the Targhee uses the same amount of yarn as the Fin Dandy 3-ply. So I suspect it uses slightly less, but anyway, this is the unblocked fabric. You know, I always love to compare. So unblocked fabric, and then, you know, look how smooth the block fabric is. It's so amazing. And then of course, you know, with the Fin Dandy, it's even crisper and more smooth. Although, you know, they feel so different. They feel somewhat different when I feel them, but when Kaya did the photography, I kept mixing up. You know, really visually from more than a few feet away, it's harder to tell them apart. So I like to run on here about all the differences between the two yarns, but they're not that different ultimately. Any questions? You guys want to pipe up and talk or what? Okay, somebody does. Is it Sue? You have a question?
No, that was just a yarn tangle.
Oh, okay. Giga?
Yeah, my question is on the interlocking, do you already have a feel for what the yardage is likely to be like for probably the longer one?
For each of these samples, I used slightly less than 3 skeins or a size 38 body. And in my experience, when you go up in size, you'll be adding 100 to 150 yards per size. So possibly with the next size up, which would be 42, you might need to start a 4th skein. So it's surprisingly, you know, I had to keep, I must have weighed these samples like 5 times. I just couldn't believe that they used so little yarn, because it's a roomy sweater and it's very comfortable. It's not body conforming at all.
Mhm.
So I was really surprised that it took like only, I don't know, 1,200 yards or something in a sport weight. Now the cropped version is 3 inches shorter than the longer version. And the only thing I have to go by with the longer version is my prototype, which doesn't have the same number of stitches. So they both use almost exactly the same weight of yarn. And I guess that would translate approximately to the same yardage too. So the Targhee's a little bit lighter. It has more yards per ounce than the Fin Dandy. So that makes sense. So they do weigh about the same, but the yardage is a little different. And that's why I'm knitting a third one, so that I can knit a third one that's exactly like my second one, but longer. And then I can weigh it and all that.
Okay, thanks.
It goes quickly though. I got the body on, yesterday during the knit along, I got the body on the needles, and I've already knit like 5 inches of the body. And yeah, so it's moving along. It should be done hopefully maybe I want to say maybe by Wednesday, but come on, I don't know for sure if I'll get that much knitting time. Now that the garden's done and I'm not spending half my day in the kitchen dealing with produce, there's an amazingly much more knitting time in my day. Sometimes I sit at my desk and I'm like, I'm all caught up. Like I don't have anything to do. So anyway, anybody else have a question? Comments?
Have you tried
and
making a,
Nicole? Go ahead.
have you made a skirt out of it, out of the fin dandy? Or could you?
I think you could.
Would it
Now,
work?
we have the interlocking skirt. Hang on. So we did knit the interlocking, a sample of the interlocking skirt using, this is the hemp, the heavier weight hemp, which equates to the sport weight somewhat. Actually, and I say we knit it, but our friend Sherry, I believe, knit this. And she actually had to go down a needle size to get the right gauge. So I do think you could knit the interlocking skirt with the fin dandy. And what would happen is you could get the right gauge, but the fabric would be noticeably lighter. Just like with the home office sweaters, you can knit them with the sport weight or the DK weight, but there's definitely a difference in the density of the fabric, even though the stitch gauge is the same. If that makes sense to everyone. And it just so happens that the sport weights we have, you can knit on a, on a needle size that goes with our DK yarn, and they will bloom enough to still have the right stability, but they will be an airier fabric, if that makes sense. All of our natural yarns do knit on a much wider range of needle sizes than most of the commercial yarns you might be used to. With untreated wool, you really have the ability to take advantage of the natural springy qualities of wool. So you can squish it down to, a needle size to make a dense fabric for mittens or a warm hat, but you can also knit it much looser and it will bloom more because it has more integrity and less interference. It will bloom to fill the spaces between the stitches in such a way that that the fabric will be stable, but lighter and more, if you want to think of it, more see-through, but still stable. Whereas a treated fiber, fibers are treated for all different reasons and usually multiple reasons. And that does take some of the liveliness out of the fiber. And so it doesn't perform as well when you try to knit it much looser or much tighter. Audrey?
What is that interlocking skirt behind you? What is the yarn in that
This
one?
is the Kent. It was designed with the Kent DK. So that was the original yarn. We have this. We have one knit in Stone Soup DK, and we have one knit in the hemp shawl. And maybe
Which would be the heavier, because I'm looking to make a skirt, but I want it quite warm.
right. And you will love this because it's really like having a cuddly sweater on your legs. It's just, and with tights, it's just great. Both the Stone Soup DK and the Kent DK, I would say, are equally warm. The Kent has a little more drape to it, so you get a little more of this swinginess. And the Stone Soup DK, well, you have a sweater in that, so you kind of know how that drapes, and you'll get a similar drape to it with
I'm
the
always
skirt.
impressed with the Stone Soup. Every time I pick it up, it's like, oh, this is so soft.
I've got the Stone Soup skirt right here. It does give you really great stitch definition. It is the softer fiber, the softer surface like the Targhee. But it's a little more sweatery feeling. I would say that because it doesn't because it doesn't relax out the way the Romney wool does, you might want to add to the length just a little bit when you're knitting. You know, you need to be conscious that you might not get as long of a skirt. So in that midsection, you know, you can add a few rows to do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And it looks so cute. Like I was saying before, Kaya did such a great job of photographing when she was photographing the sweater, she did pictures of the sweater by itself, but then she did pictures of the sweater with the skirt and with the hat, and they're just so cute. It looks like they're out on a ski slope somewhere. So cute. Pam?
I see that you've done all the sweaters with a lighter color wool, but I was wondering what you think it would look like with the darker, with that, I think it's bear or the darker brown.
You mean like this?
Yeah, except in the Fin Dandy. I mean, I don't, you know, is the
I mean,
Fin
how-
Dandy
I
pretty
mean-
close to that color?
The Fin Dandy is actually a lighter brown than this. It's a
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's a more it's a more golden caramel brown. And Anne is holding up her sweater. She's got a cabled
Okay, let me look real quick.
The
Hold on.
unbroken in
she's
the
got the unbroken
in
on.
bear. So that's the brown
Mhm.
in the Fin Dandy 3-ply. I like
Okay. Oh, okay. So that might really like look pretty nice then.
Oh yeah, and I mean
Yeah.
this skirt is fairly dark. The Kent, it was designed with a fairly dark yarn.
Uh-huh.
The Kent and driftwood was the original color of the design.
Yeah.
I think people worry unnecessarily about whether dark fibers are going to show off cables and stitch patterns enough. I just don't see it, and maybe I don't see what other people see, but I see lots of texture in the darker colors, and sometimes I feel like even the light colors lose some of that texture.
Yeah, and
So-
I happen to like the darker colors. They look nicer on me. So, you know, that's why I was kind of wondering. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
if you look on our, like, I gave this example to somebody last week, and she was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. You know, if you look at her home office sweater, the pullover is knit in the darkest shade of Targi Tango, and it has the most subtle of textures. There's hardly any texture to it, but that texture really pops in those photos, and it's just a little pearl stitch now and then in a line. You know, there's nothing to it, so it still shows off the texture really well. I think the ability to show off texture is much more related to how smooth or fuzzy the yarn is, how densely it's spun. So a tighter spun yarn will show off stitch definition a little bit better. And you know, the number of plies can also make a difference. A 2-ply yarn can have a lot of its own texture that will interfere with stitch definition. Not always, but sometimes. The 3-ply yarns and 4-ply yarns are smoother, and that they will always give you really nice stitch definition. So that's my 2 cents on that. Or 3.
Yeah, can I ask another question? I've never made a yoke sweater before. So
Uh-huh.
is there some tips that you would be able to give me? I mean, if I know my measurements across, right? And I know what I wear, if it's a set-in sleeve or not, is there some tips you could give me as to what I should be looking for in a finished size in comparison on a yoke sweater? Do you know what I mean? Especially across the top, really. It's really the shoulder fitting area and all that. Yeah.
Well, there isn't any fit, you know. There are no shoulder seams or
Right.
arm size seams to fall in the right place.
Okay.
So like a raglan style, there is no predetermined shoulder line. So in that way, if you struggle with having the right shoulder width, it's easier. It's just a circle of patterning. And then by working top down, you can try it on and decide how long you want the yoke to be. The longer the yoke, the deeper the armhole. You can think about it that way.
Right.
So if you're petite and you know that you always have to raise up your armhole, you might want to knit your yoke half an inch shorter or something like that.
Okay.
But at the same time, you don't want the yoke to be all up under your arm, because there isn't any fit. There's no sculpting of that armhole area the way you have in a set-in sleeve that gives you the ability to tailor it very exactly. So if you try to tailor a piece like this too much or too closely to your body, you're going to end up with funny, you're going to end up with this under your arm.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So you need, with raglans and circular yokes, you need to let them fall a little lower than a set-in sleeve.
Okay.
And because of that, of course, they have a more casual, they tend to have a more casual look to them.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. Anybody else? Oh, so I guess to finish up on that, you can just pretty much go by your chest size and what you like your ease to be, or the recommended ease of the pattern in this case will be, I don't know, 4 to 5 inches or something like that of ease. And then the only other fitting area is the depth of the yoke and the length of the sleeve. So now we're also, for those who don't know, we're also in the midst of our Red Scarf Fundraiser. So we've got our, which is an annual effort. We do every year. We publish a series of patterns and we create a special, this is the only dyed yarn that we produce under our label, is our Festivus yarn, which is always at least red. Sometimes we have other colors too, but they're gone now, so we won't talk about them. So we're in the midst of our fundraiser. What we do with the money is we create a scholarship for a kid who has aged out of the foster care system and is navigating their way through college. And it is just what it sounds. Those kids are on their own after the age of 18. And while they do have some support systems, they really are, at the same time that they're navigating college and time management and all of those things, they're navigating very adult situations, like having their own apartment and their own car to take care of, and possibly keeping an eye out on siblings that are still in foster care at the same time. So most of these kids have very grown-up life challenges in addition to college, and we try to support them through a scholarship fund, so that one of the things that they can worry about less is money. And we work with the Foster Care to Success program, which is formerly known as the Orphan Foundation of America. They're a very long-standing institution that provides services and support for kids of all ages in foster care or who are parentless. But one of the programs that we do is the college prep and college support program. And we established our scholarship over 10 years ago with a very small scholarship and have grown it just about every year. So last year was our biggest scholarship ever. It was $12,000. And I'm happy to report that it's not even Thanksgiving yet, and we are nearly there already. So we are shooting for the moon and going for 15 this year. And I'm so happy. It just, it chokes me up to talk about it, but it just really makes me so happy that our community is so generous to help out with this. Everyone is not only generous and, you're all so enthusiastic about it. And the way everyone jumps on the yarn and jumps on the patterns and gets into the swing is so fun. Last year we started having a knit along to go with Red Scarf. So we are currently underway with our knit along, and there's still 4 weeks to go. So if you're not signed up yet and you want to, it costs $15 to join. All of that money goes into the scholarship fund. And we will be knitting on Wednesday evenings and Saturday afternoons from now through December 18th. And there are hardly any rules. You know, if you knit with Festivus yarn or a Festivus pattern or knit spot yarn or a knit spot pattern or someone else's yarn, someone else's pattern with our yarn, you know, we just really want people to join us. And it's an oasis for you in the middle of holiday scramble to be able to take a couple hours on Wednesday night and or Saturday to knit and chat and sit down. So we heartily invite you to join us. It's never too late to join. And if you're not a joiner and that doesn't sound fun, but you haven't heard of Red Scarf yet, please go to our website. There's a whole page with a collection of the patterns. There's an ebook available that includes all the patterns. The yarns are listed there, as well as donation pages. So you can donate any amount. We are grateful for every penny. We take care of all the PayPal fees on it and everything. We're happy to absorb that on our end. And then at the end, we usually round up the donation with our own donation added on. So I'm just so grateful that for the people who are participating, but also super grateful for anyone who wants to join us. So let's see what else. We have lots of fun stuff coming up for the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, the Black Friday blowout, you know. We actually, this year we're having a different special every day. So we have a couple different promotions. They're all listed in the email that's coming on Wednesday. So keep your eyes peeled for that. I was going to say something additional about that, about Black Friday. Yeah, I can't remember now, but plenty of goodies in there for you. And after that, we kind of coast into the December holiday season with not, you know, a lot of, you know, hoopla, except the interlock and pullover is going to be released sometime in December. So get ready for that too. Let's see. And then before we know it, we'll be back here in January with a really fun new yarn that I'm swatching with, not as we speak, but I am swatching with it today. I have already made one swatch and we'll be working on others. So something very squishy and fun. Any other questions before we close, or? All right, well, don't forget that, you know, don't forget to check out the knit along. Oh, in January, just before the next barn box, we'll be starting our sweater knit along. I believe it's gonna begin around the 8th of January. Just pencil it, don't hold me to that exact date, but I think that's gonna be the date. We might move it up to the 5th. That was the vote. That was the vote. That was the consensus yesterday. But I have to talk to Kai. You know, part of getting ready for events is that our staff needs to be in the office and working to get everything ready. So with Christmas holidays and the uncertainty always of, you know, the threat of illness descending on us yet again, you never know what's going to happen. But that is the basic outline for the next 2 months. Someone like posted a comment, and it, the comments pop up very briefly. So if I'm talking, I can't read it at the same time. So if that person could say it out loud, that'd be like a lot easier. Somebody posted something just in the comments. Can you see it, Anne? Oh, she said, from what I hear you saying. Anybody? All right, sorry, I can't read and talk, unfortunately, can't read and talk very well at this time. And it would be fine if it just stayed there and I could read it when I stop talking, but it pops up and then it goes away. So very helpfully doesn't help me. Okay, I guess that's everything. Oh, did I hear all colors of Festivus are gone? No. Oh yes, I think there might be some white left. The green is
It looks
definitely
like it.
gone. Yeah, the green is gone in both ways.
There was
There
white
might be-
this morning, just now on the worsted. I just looked.
Right. And don't forget that you can mix, the Festivus comes in fingering and sport weight, and it's a merino cashmere silk blend. It pairs very well with many of our other yarns. So even if the white in the same fiber blend is gone, it pairs well with the Better Breakfast yarn. It pairs well with even Stone Soup. I mean, some of our designers even used our other yarns with it.
Mhm.
So Stone Soup is another option. And I've seen some finished pieces with those combinations. The red having the silk in it has a gleam, kind of a little shine to it that pops really beautifully off the matte colors of the natural fibers. So I think you could even use the Fin Dandy with it, or the Shetland.
Robin's showing off hers.
Oh, let's see, Robbie, you have to
Talk,
talk.
Robin.
Chirp, chirp.
It's the Stone Soup fingering in marble with the fingering Festivus.
Mhm.
So this is Stone Soup in fingering, which is a natural dye, a natural from Anne, shows off the colored fiber very nicely.
Right,
Really
and
does.
the designer did use those. So these are the original designer caps. This is one, the pine tree, the towering pines, and this is the Echinopsis that Robin is knitting. So that little bit of gray actually really enriches the red nicely, and kind of takes like the the Christmas, it kind of takes the Christmassy look out of it, which personally I like. So beautiful. We have a bunch. I'm gonna just move this. So there's a couple more of the designs. The red scarf designs are by we have 9 designers. It's the 8 or 9 designers and 11 total designs, and everything from scarves and shawls to mittens and hats. Here's another couple of color work pieces. Again, these are the 2 Festivus colors, the cream and the red. And then this is the same design in the
That's lovely.
Kent DK yarns. So I really love these gray ones. Those are super cute. We are fortunate that our fellow designers that join us are giving the proceeds of their patterns to the scholarship fund, as well as myself. This is my cabled scarf and wrap. So all the designers are actually donating to it, which we're super fortunate for. And so please support them too ongoing. They're all wonderful people, wonderful designers. And we have literally when we propose this project to people, dyers and designers, it almost unanimously is like, oh, I'm so excited to do this. You know, they really jump on it. There's never any like wishy-washy, you know, on the fence people. It's always people just really jumping in and saying, I really want to do this. So please support them. And throughout the holidays and beyond. And I don't think I have any more. I'm just prattling at this point. So if anyone has any last questions, let me know. You can also always email us at jeeves@knitspot.com for with questions and help if you need help with anything. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. I hope to see you all back here on Wednesday. And if you can't make it, that's okay. Please consider a cash donation. We'll be happy to take it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Happy
All right.
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye,
Sunday.
Ann.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ann. Bye.